And a jarring cacophony at the start of a podcast can only mean one thing. It's time for another episode of The Power of Three. That made it sound like we're a bunch of superheroes, but we're not really. We just tried to be heroes. Or heroic. Or entertaining. We'll take entertaining. Trying to bring you some Doctor Who content every week. On a Monday, or even late on a Sunday if you prefer, we bring you a book club episode, and today we're bringing you a normal bit of Doctor Who chat. And today we are returning to the territory of obverse books and the Black Archive series, because today we are going to be discussing their latest release, number 76 in the series, which covers the Fourth Doctor's final tale, Logopolis. Let's have a quick look at what the book has to tell us. Structure is the essence of matter, and the essence of structure is mathematics. Logopolis, 1981, is a mournful epic of cosmic destruction, obsolescence, and collapse. This Black Archive investigates the changes before and behind the camera, explores the story's themes of entropy and rebirth, and places it in the context of a specific moment in the history of computing. The man who's written it is Jonathan Hay, and he'll be joining us very, very soon to discuss the book, which, as I said, has been published by Obverse Books. It's got 119 pages, as we do like to feature our pals from Obverse. They're published over in Edinburgh, well, we're through here in Glasgow in The Power of Three. So let's find out more about the writing of this book with the author.
Yeah, I'm Jonathan Hay. I am an author and I'm a lecturer as well. And I've written The Black Archive number 76, Logopolis.
Fantastic. So what made you choose this one? Because there's a hell of a lot of stories out there, so why go with this one, Jonathan?
It was actually quite pragmatic, I've got to be honest. I think I took a look at the different titles that were still available. I seem to remember I made a big Excel document in terms of the ones that had already been taken, and then I've got, like a lot of Doctor Who fans, I suppose, I've got a big, another Excel document that kind of ranks all the different stories and stuff, and, you know, where I stand on them all. So I kind of put that into... yeah, it sounds massively nerdy, doesn't it? But I think we all are and stuff. So, yeah, had a look through and kind of tallied the two up in terms of which had already been taken. And of course, loads of the really good stories had been taken and stuff. But yeah, Logopolis was one of the outliers that nobody had really touched yet. So yeah, Black Archive had an open call for papers at that point and decided that was the one I wanted to put forward. It's got such a sense to it of impending doom and stuff, and it's really quite dark, but also very much focused on the science, which is something as an academic who researches science fiction that I'm really, I guess I'm confident in discussing.
Yeah. So could you maybe tell us a wee bit about your professional work away from this book, of course?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my doctorate in science fiction a few years ago and stuff, and particularly I study science fiction and how it intersects with a field of philosophy that's called posthumanism. So posthumanism is all, in some ways, to do with how technology impacts the species and how technology kind of changes the essence of what it is to be human and stuff. There is a lot more to it than that, but that's one of the threads. So it's really interesting philosophy to apply to Doctor Who and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely a way of looking at, you know, science fiction shows that deal with technology in that sense.
And I suppose in many ways season 18's absolutely tailor-made for you, and of course with Logopolis having been written by the script editor, it absolutely dovetails perfectly.
Absolutely, yeah. Christopher Bidmead, who, no relation to the person who does the cover art for the Black Archives, who's also called Bidmead. Yeah, Christopher Bidmead really came at it from an interesting perspective, I'd say. You know, when he came to season 18, he was really looking for a different perspective another, I think he'd just taken over from Douglas Adams from memory. And Douglas Adams had been very kind of like high on the jovial scripts and stuff. He's written, wrote some brilliant episodes and script edited lots of brilliant episodes as well. But then when it comes to Bidmead really wants to put science back as the focus of Doctor Who, front and centre. So I think I mentioned in the book, there's something along the lines of, he stated to all the potential writers that he wanted them to be writing stuff that couldn't have been in the last few seasons of Doctor Who. And I think it's implied that he explicitly rejected any proposals that seemed like they could have fitted into recent series. So, yeah, he really took an interesting stance towards the programme. And again, kind of, there's a moment where Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor uses a screwdriver, a physical screwdriver and stuff to try to repair the Faris project near the end. A climactic moment, because Bidmead hates the sonic screwdriver. He thinks that it's technoscience and pseudoscience, and really there's no basis to it in terms of Doctor Who, and it just resolves all the plot threads too easily. So yeah, he's really kind of taking it back to the basics. And obviously it's Doctor Who's never going to be entirely realistic. We're always going to have moments where it veers away from established science and stuff. But yeah, there's this real sense in Logopolis that these real scientific phenomena are kind of rearing their heads.
Yeah, I pulled up my own sonic screwdriver here, not literally a real one, this is character options.
I think that's Third Doctor, is it?
It's a Third Doctor one, yes. With this, there you go, yeah, from the recent special edition release. But anyway, we're not here for that. So, Logopolis, could you tell us what the back cover blurb to your book says?
Absolutely. Structure is the essence of matter, and the essence of structure is mathematics. The first of Christopher H Bidmead's duology of scripts bringing the exit of Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor and the arrival of a new cast, Logopolis from 1981, is a mournful epic of cosmic destruction, obsolescence and collapse. This black archive investigates the changes both in front of and behind the camera, explores the story's themes of entropy and rebirth, and places it in the context of a specific moment in the history of computing.
Yeah, and it's got a glorious cover when you go around to the other side with all those police boxes.
It does, yeah. It's a really interesting kind of look at the way that you can represent it in art, and it links firmly into the next serial along as well, of course, and stuff where this kind of like comes out as more of an actual theme and stuff. Obviously there's no spoilers because these episodes aired years ago and stuff, but yeah, it really kind of plays into the following serial.
Very much so, with recursive occlusions and all that, which is a great term. I often use it in work, and nobody knows where I've got it from, but that's one of the wonders of our show. So what was your starting point for this one? Was it a case of have a look at some old production files, things like that, wherever you could get your hands on, or was it more go and watch it, make some notes, and then think, where's this going to take me?
Yeah, I think season 18 of the collection series and stuff had just been released, and at that point I hadn't actually begun to invest in it. And this was kind of a jumping off point for me investing in the collection box sets as well. I remember paying a stupendous amount of money because it was one of the really difficult ones to locate at the time. But of course it had all the production documentation on the Logopolis disc and on the bonus disc. So it has all the original scripts which hadn't been released for, I think we're talking about 40 years at the time. So it was really interesting to go back to those original scripts, all the original production material, as you hint, and stuff, and just dig into it really, because obviously the Bidmead's own adaptation of the script had been released as a book around about, I think that was mid-1980s, I might be wrong on that, but the actual scripts and stuff that fed into it, and a lot of the details, all the small notes that were passed between members of staff in terms of like trying to book Jodrell Bank and failing, they'd not really been uncovered. People had access to them in terms of like the production writing. So I kind of started there and then went through all the special features and learnt different things along the way. It's interesting, because obviously I am, compared to some, a younger Doctor Who fan. So it's interesting coming to it from years later. I did find some interesting stuff along the way. As the finished book mentions, yeah, one of the interesting things that I found, I mean, hopefully it's interesting to readers and stuff because it was interesting to come across, was for years it had been said that this Start the Week interview, there was a spoiler that was dropped and stuff, in the sense that Peter Davison, after having taken the role about 2 months in and stuff, he had been on Start the Week, this long-running radio show in 1980, and he had revealed that the Watcher was in fact going to turn into the Doctor a good few months before the finale of Logopolis aired. It turns out, because I had to go to the archives because this clip doesn't exist, and stuff went through BBC Genome and they were massively helpful. And yeah, it turns out they've actually deleted and junked all the recordings of Start the Week, which wasn't known. And of course, that's quite familiar to us as Doctor Who fans. But it was only actually after this inquiry that they realised they didn't have all these episodes anymore. So people had known that Peter Davison was on this episode. The Doctor Who magazines and stuff had been actually getting it wrong by a few months. It was actually aired earlier than it had been said. But the really interesting thing I found out, because they managed to locate the original production files, was that a particular third Doctor had also been on the show earlier in the same episode, which hadn't been particularly known about and stuff. So it had actually been a joint interview between John Pertwee and Peter Davison. So yeah, it's something there for fandom to have a go at. Now, I know that copies of this exist. There are definitely off-air copies, because it has been cited in a few instances with more detail than available on the production pages. So somebody out there has got a copy of this that they've recorded from the radio, but it hasn't yet turned up in terms of fandom. People don't yet have access to this double Doctor interview from the early years, which is quite rare, really. So yeah, it was interesting to kind of uncover that along the way. And I think when you dig into these topics in detail, there's always unexpected stuff that comes up.
Very much so. And at this point, we should say, if anybody's listening and has a copy, please do get in touch with us on the Power of Three podcast, and it will be passed on to the relevant people. I know that Michael Stevens at BBC Audio would absolutely love that. So yeah, that would be fun. That would be good fun. So I suppose the thing is that this is absolutely the perfect story for you then, with given your professional line of work and your love of Doctor Who. I mean, really, this is the science, geeky, computery stuff. This is really the ultimate story for anyone who likes that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've ended up teaching data science for years and stuff, and also growing up right near Jodrell Bank and stuff. So it's really, it's a serial that's always really appealed to me. I did what a lot of perhaps younger Doctor Who fans did during the lockdown, which was try to watch through the whole of the classic series for the first time and stuff. And I remember getting to Logopolis and really just being floored by the emotion that was there, and also the complex technical arguments and stuff that are put into place, really, and all the way that all the science works and stuff. I think one of the ways I was thinking about it is obviously with the recent episode The Well and stuff, the Doctor's up against the Midnight Creature again in whatever you choose to call the new series, whether it's season 2 or etc., or 15, as I think a lot of us would have.
Definitely.
So he's up against this creature that he can't defeat, really, in the sense of this creature, and of course it escapes at the end. But this was already done in 1981. Logopolis had already kind of come up with this idea in the sense of this, this force of physics that the Doctor, in terms of entropy, the Doctor can't overcome entropy. And Bidmead really kind of underlines this the whole way through the serial and stuff. He's constantly got imagery of the telescope in the background that the Doctor's going to fall from. He's got the phone, even in the first part, and stuff that falls down from the police phone box and stuff, and that's hanging by a thread and stuff. So he's constantly foregrounding the fact that this is an inevitable situation and the science can't be escaped from. The heat death of the universe is going to occur, and it's really going to be this drastic and inevitable event at the end of the universe that in this case the Doctor can't see his way around, just like the Midnight Entity. So he's got to find different ways of appealing to finding different ways of kind of putting it off, I suppose, in a sense. And he does eventually manage to use a kind of like pseudoscientific theory by the same person who came up with the idea of entropy in the end, the idea of Maxwell's demon, kind of like just discharging all the used energy, etc., essentially to a different universe and stuff, opening a door and stuff. So it kind of gets around it in some sense, but yeah, there's this very dark sense at the centre of the serial that's not really there in a lot of Doctor Who.
Very much so. And of course, it's a very different type of story, given that there's no monster apart from the Master's monstrous acting when he's pushing those buttons at the end. But it's a very different way for a Doctor to go. Pretty much he's battling against a force of nature, and there's no way of stopping it in this case.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, it's also the first time that the Doctor and the Master team up, of course. And, we'd see that a lot later in the brilliant Capaldi series 10 in particular and stuff. But it's really, it's not been done before in the sense that they, as the Blu-ray version makes particularly clear, there's an overnight shot and stuff. They go to, I think it's the evening and then it's the morning again. The Doctor and the Master have been working all night trying to find a solution to this and find a way to, escape the entropy that's engulfing the universe. So it's really kind of foreshadowing a lot of stuff that's coming up, in the sense that the Master isn't just an antagonist in the episode. He's really kind of somebody who's there to, he gets it wrong as well, because he isn't looking to take over the universe. He's just trying to, work out what the secret of Logopolis is. But then when it comes to getting the chance and stuff, he does try to take over the universe. But that's not his initial plan. He gets it wrong. So it really kind of expands the Master's character in lots of ways and starts making him, I guess, less one-dimensional in some sense, is my impression. Yeah, there's a movement away from him just wanting to conquer the universe, and although he still takes the chance when it comes.
Yeah. And of course, he hideously gets it wrong when he's going around Logopolis and killing all the mathematicians there. And yeah, it's and pretty much he's the one who sets the advanced heat death of the universe in motion. So well done, the Master. Slow hand clap. So you've broken up the book into several sections. So what was your sort of thinking? Like, what did you have an initial idea as to how you wanted to do this and break it down, and going through all these different areas which are for the benefit of the listeners? Chapter 1, resetting the scene. Chapter 2, regenerations. Chapter 3, entropy. Chapter 4, computers. Chapter 5, the singularity. And Chapter 6, the TARDIS, plus of course a conclusion.
I think I kind of had ideas and stuff bouncing around and stuff in different ways. The conclusion is very firmly focused on the ways that the Blu-ray release kind of updates the serial and stuff. So it's very focused on, because at the time this was new and stuff, and it was interesting to see it updated, and interesting to see as well that you still can't get the VHS version, which is the original broadcast version. You can still only get that on the VHS and stuff, even with the season release and stuff. And I think there are cases where it has been included as an extra and stuff, particularly more recently and stuff. So yeah, the different chapters, they kind of look at different ideas, because it is a serial that's got a lot of different big ideas and stuff that can somewhat be distilled down into these different themes and stuff. Bidmead is exploring the way that computers work and stuff, as well as the way that technology is changing society, and the way that science is impacting this. And it's also, as the earlier chapters delve into, it's also an interesting time in terms of the programme, with so many changes being afoot. Almost the entire staff working on Doctor Who changed in between season 17 and 18. So Logopolis was really kind of a focal point in terms of the show itself changing. Not just the Fourth Doctor regenerating, it was really a time of the whole show regenerating. So it really kind of links into all these notions of entropy and technological change. It all nicely plays together, and hopefully there's a sense of that with the complete book.
It's interesting the fact you've actually gone in and had a look at and given an explanation of J. Clark Maxwell's theory of heat, which is, I suppose, that is effectively at the core of the story. So I think it is important to be able to get in there and explain that for the reader, just to give them where Chris Bidmead's coming from with this.
Yeah, so I think my intention was to kind of drill into some of the concepts in particular. And, I'm not a scientist and stuff, but I have at least a rudimentary understanding of the scientific concepts, hopefully enough to kind of explain the details of what's going on here. So it was really interesting doing that research myself as well, because there's always a lot more answers out there and stuff. And Bidmead obviously knows a lot more about all the science going into this stuff. And he'd really written it so that you can do more research into these areas if you want to. I think it's a really interesting, it's some of the closest that Doctor Who ever gets to hard science fiction and stuff. So yeah, in particular, it really reminds me of Timescape by Gregory Benford and Hilary Foister and stuff, where you've got this intractable problem, time travel, that can't really be, there's no way to bridge it and stuff, so they have to find different ways of getting around it. And in Timescape, in that sense, it's, they can very slowly send messages to the past, whereas in Logopolis, they have to find ways of dispersing the energy somehow. And the Logopolitans have been doing this for, perhaps centuries, perhaps millennia and stuff, because the universe, as far as this serial considers, has already been dying and already should have died. It's only because the Logopolitans have been working so hard to expel all this dead energy and stuff that they, that it's only because they've been in place until the Master disrupts them that the universe hasn't died in this case. I
found it interesting, when you watch again, when they're talking of things like bubble memory when they're trying to remove bits of the computers. But in many ways, it's sort of prescient of what we have here. And here I have in my hand an external USB drive, and effectively that's what they're doing, and taking that technology with them from Logopolis back to Earth.
It is, yeah, because there's the big links between the Jodrell Bank telescope and the Faris project, of course, which in some ways is a bit obvious on rewatching it and stuff. You can see what they're going for and stuff. But, at the time when you watch through and stuff, it works really well. Of course, the Watcher plays a big role in this story as well. And I guess in some ways, like, particular computer functions, as you mentioned, he can just transport at will, essentially. And there's some really interesting tensions in the episode around that, because he'll just suddenly disappear from shot and stuff, and you won't know where he's gone. He also mysteriously, and it's never explained, appears with Nyssa, having transported her without a TARDIS and stuff, because it's confirmed later on in the episode that there are only 2 TARDISes on Logopolis and stuff. So the Watcher, as this future form of the Doctor, is capable of just transporting himself and Nyssa, presumably, just like as if he's a USB drive that can teleport through space and stuff. So there's really interesting stuff going on in the background as well, when you really kind of stop and think about it.
I think that's something that people don't always talk about, the Watcher. I mean, as you note, on page 57, the Watcher's presence foregrounds this fatalistic yet scientifically accurate theme. And I think that's the thing, that's when you realise what the Watcher is, that it's sort of just that it's oncoming doom.
It is. He's really unexplained for a lot of it and stuff. And I do go into the book a little bit into kind of like the ramifications and stuff of what he may be, but of course we don't know. And Bidmead had a very, wanted him to just be kind of like this ghostly presence, but the costume designers had different impressions and stuff and wanted him to be more of kind of mummified presence. So, and we never get to hear him speak. We get impressions from the Doctor of what he's said, but we never quite get to see him. And of course he foreshadows other kind of like momentary Doctors that we see later on in Doctor Who as a whole and stuff. He's one of the first times that we get the sense that maybe the Doctor's regenerations aren't always straightforward. There's this sense that the regenerations might work in ways that can sabotage the Doctor a little bit, or that don't always move straightforwardly.
Most definitely not, as we discover at the start of Castro Babel, when he takes a wee while to recover. Something really quite fascinating about Logopolis is just the sort of the science fiction of the period and how this fits in with it. So how would you say it sort of, is it zeitgeisting, or is it ahead in some ways, or does it have obvious influences? Because obviously you'll know a lot more of these things than I do. I've only read the obvious stuff. Yeah,
so I think that's a really good question. It's certainly the influences that I came across is, Arthur C. Clarke's the 9 Billion Names of God, one of his short stories, has very similar themes in the sense of the universe being brought about, the end of the universe, being brought about by monks kind of looking onto computers and stuff, and whereas they've been, trying to say all the 9 billion names of God just by writing them down, all of a sudden they get a computer which automates the process, and the universe ends up ending a lot faster than they're anticipating. And as they're walking away along the mountains and stuff, the universe literally collapses in on itself. So that was one of the really big...
Yeah, that sounds very Douglas Adams, it has to be said.
It does. Yeah, I'm sure he'd have loved to write that short story and stuff, and obviously he took bits from all across for Hitchhiker's series in particular and stuff. Yeah, it's really got that sense of dramatic impact and kind of like humour as well at the end of things, hasn't it? That's common to Douglas Adams. So yeah, that was one of the really big kind of like influences, I suppose. Also, Isaac Asimov's novella The Last Question and stuff really kind of delves into this kind of idea as well, where a computer's being asked to see how it can avoid the heat death of the universe, and it can't answer until it finally gets to essentially the end of the universe, and the only thing it can do at that point is create another Big Bang. So these two stories from the 1950s really kind of feed into the idea of the way that the serial kind of grounds itself in this particular scientific problem. But I think more broadly than that, it's also influenced by mutually assured destruction and stuff at the end, in the 60s, 70s, this sense of nuclear Armageddon and stuff, because the Master, particularly the way he, sends this ransom message to the universe, or tries to, until the Doctor interrupts. he's really kind of playing around with these ideas of, I have all the power here. I can make the first strike now that I've got this essentially link to everyone. So yeah, it's kind of really playing around with all these nuclear fears in this age where it was perceived to be even more of a threat than it is now. Yeah.
How many times did you watch Logopolis as part of your research for this? Because I'd imagine it would be a good few times.
I think Logopolis I must have seen must be about 10 or 12 times, including the different versions. So one of the processes that went into this book, and I don't know if it's the same for other authors, is sitting down and watching the different versions. Because again, there's three, distinct ways it's been done. There's the original VHS copy, there's the DVD copy, and then there's the Blu-ray version and stuff. So it's watching each of these different ones, and certainly the way I did it was make notes about the differences and stuff. So kind of watching in minute detail for, where there's a change and stuff. So I must have seen at least the DVD copy at least 8-9 times, and the Blu-ray copy a few more times. So it's quite seared into my mind, most of it anyway, and particularly certain shots like the infamous Frozen Master shot at the end in part 4. Yeah. Where he's standing at the... Sorry, this probably doesn't translate too well to audio, but I'm sure listeners will understand that.
You know exactly the bit we're talking about with the... Yes, it looks almost like a cardboard cutout video still. It's, not the most convincing shot of Anthony Ainley.
No, it's not, but the Blu-ray does correct it nicely as well.
Yes, that's true.
He's moving, and it's, it just adds so much more. And, the Blu-ray does really nice things in that way. So, I've seen it quite a few times at this point, and it's still got value. Even after watching it that many times, I've heard people refer to Doctor Who episodes that you can overwatch, and there are a few that I've probably overwatched, but it's got this really oppressive sense to it as well. Tom Baker's acting out the last of his tenure as the Doctor and really kind of goes to town in lots of ways. He, as I mentioned in the book, he only smiles at one point in the whole time and stuff. He looks dismal as ever and stuff, as he's been looking for most of season 18 and stuff. But he's really, even when he jettisons Romana's room, he's got no sense of feeling sorry about it and stuff. And obviously this makes sense in terms of the behind the scenes conflicts that had gone on. But, he's a Doctor who essentially has almost given up. He's very different to his earlier self, this bright, bubbly kind of person. So, just this sense that he's really ready to regenerate in some ways, it seems. Yeah,
definitely the more it goes on, and obviously with what was happening in Tom's real life, it was obviously translated quite nicely to hear when he wanted to go but he didn't want to go, and obviously JNT was like, right, off you go, bye, and rather than try to persuade him to stay. And it definitely it's art and imitating life in many ways in this case. So thoroughly enjoyed it. So do you have any particular favourite parts, bits that you really sort of wanted to do, and any bits you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, I think the really cool thing for me was I got to at least peripherally discuss bits of the Doctor Who TV movie, and also other bits where the Eighth Doctor was involved, because he's my Doctor essentially. So it was nice to be able to get those bits in there, because there are links between the two and stuff. There's, particularly in terms of the Master, it's interesting comparing the way that the Master works in the TV movie versus how the Master is portrayed in this. I also got to reference Dimensions of Time. That one did remain in. So that was nice to be able to get that in the Black Archive series somewhere.
Fantastic. You're going on a journey.
Yes.
A very long journey.
I can't imagine somehow that they'll ever, make a Black Archive of Dimensions in Time. But if there is, I'll be all there for it. It's just got this wonderful camp appeal. So, and so that was really interesting. No, that's probably the bit that I'm most proud of, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely good. I think we'll be able to tie in the fact that it's got Cloister Bell, it's got the cloisters themselves, and just that. And both stories have regenerations, the Master and the Doctor are both there. So there's definitely quite a few things in common, and the end of the world, but perhaps for very different ways.
It's a bit more grounded, isn't it, in science than the TV movie, perhaps. Yeah, it's interesting though. Logopolis is actually the first time that the Cloister Bell appears as well. It can be very overused in the modern show, but the very first time it ever comes about, this is the first kind of like universe-ending catastrophe that causes the Cloister Bell to sound. And given what the first, second, and third Doctors have been through, that's really telling.
Yeah, and it is a wonderful sound as well. Shall we listen to it now? beautiful, isn't it? Is that wonderful electronic. There's almost that, when you listen to it properly in stereo, there's almost like an electronic splodge to it around it as well. Love it.
There is, yeah. I'd love to know who came up with it and how it was kind of arrived at and stuff. But yeah, they were doing lots of really interesting musical changes and stuff at the time that Logopolis was being produced as well. So yeah, really interesting. Of course, the theme tune had changed around then as well and stuff. But yeah, the music teams were changing as well. So there were all these new ideas coming in.
It's fantastic. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time, because great read, recommended as ever. People, go to the Black Archive. We'll give you the details shortly on where you can find it, and go and buy it. And keep you happy as well, Jonathan. Got to buy it. Support an author.
No, thank you very much. It's just great to be able to contribute in this way and stuff.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Now, Logopolis is available to purchase from Obverse Books. You can get direct ordering info at www.obversebooks.co.uk/product/76-Logopolis/. And that will take you straight to the ordering page. And there's a deal on just now where you can get the paperback for $5.99 rather than $7.99, and the price ranges from $3.99 up to $8.99. So there's copies in stock now, but if you want to get one, get them now while they're still there. And don't be afraid to have a look at the back catalogue, because there's a hell of a lot of great books there. We featured quite a few of them on The Power of Three. We featured the most recent couple of releases, and in Pieces of Eighth, we've done the 8th Doctor books, including the fantastic Night of the Doctor Examination by James Curry Smith. Well worth getting. Fascinating parallels in there between the TV movie and it, which I'd never noticed. There's more to come from Obverse this year in the Black Archive range. And funnily enough, the next book to be released will cover Castrovalva, which will be written by Andrew Orton, who wrote the Black Archive on The Deadly Assassin. Then in August, there's a recent tale of Gods and Beetles. It's The Devil's Cord, which has been written by Dale Smith. And he's a bit of a Black Archive regular, having written instalments on Talons of Weng-Chiang, Greatest Show in the Galaxy, and Silence in the Library / Forest of the Dead. In October, it's The Enemy of the World by Robert Fairclough. And finally in December, Jez Strictly will be taking a look at The Mysterious Planet, the opening instalment of The Trial of a Time Lord, so there's plenty there to sink your teeth into. Their submission window is also open, so if you take a look at their website, you will find out just what it is they're looking for if you've ever fancied writing one. My original idea was to do one in Time in the Rani with my daughter when Katie was about 7, but unfortunately Katie's now 19, so it's not going to happen. However, she is making Dugadoos, and if you want to get one, do drop us a line, and I'm sure we'll be able to sort something out as she makes them all to order individually. She's even sent one to somebody very high up in Doctor Who circles. Remember, you can follow The Power of Three on social media. We are on Twitter at Power of Three Pod with a number 3. We have a Facebook page where you can like things, and we share content in there, and sometimes extra pictures and beautiful illustrations to brighten up our social media. And you can also follow me personally on Blue Sky at Finished Zine. And of course, good reviews are never a bad thing, so if you enjoy what we do, please feel free to go onto your podcast provider and leave us a nice little review with some positive comments, if you'd be so kind. So time's against us, and we need to find out what we're going to play out with today. Given that this is a story with a TARDIS inside a TARDIS inside a TARDIS inside a TARDIS, you could really say that the Doctor and Adric are living in a box, which actually they are. So we're going to go with Living in a Box by Living in a Box. We'll be back on Monday or late on Sunday evening if you prefer, and we'll be bringing you another book. Which one could it be? There's only one way to find out what it is. Join us, tune in, and see what it is. Bye bye for now.